You are listening to the Bases Juiced podcast with John Source and Brian Goudsworth.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the Bases Juiced podcast. John Source, Brian Goudsworth here. August 14th, 2016. Been a couple weeks, Brian, since we've been able to do this, but obviously last time we did this we discussed the trade deadline. We're going to get back into that a little bit, but we're going to start with, the top story around baseball. On Friday night, A-Rod, the whole saga that we had the week leading up to his last game, and then playing in his last game, has the RBI double, goes 1 for 4, then finishes the game out, plays one out in the field in the top of the ninth inning back at third base. And, he's had a marvelous career. I think Michael Kay said it best. Really, we know the ups and downs he's been through in his career. The numbers, they're there, they're what they are, but I think a lot of people feel that's with an asterisk. But at the end of the day, I think the Yankees are glad to move on. We saw what their young kids did yesterday with Judge and Austin going deep in their first at-bats. What were your thoughts on Friday night?
Yeah, well, as you said, a very strange week leading up to the actions on Friday night, and you call it a saga. That's really what it was. A-Rod couldn't find a way in the lineup in Boston, his last ever series there, until the last game, and, Joe Girardi was getting a lot of heat, like, why aren't you playing him? It's his last couple days. But all that said, Friday was a very good day for A-Rod and the Yankees, and I thought a good way for him to go out. We know about the legacy, and as you point out, Michael Kay saying, it's complicated to put into words, and I think that's really the universal thought on this guy, and as is the case with all the steroid users. They have these great numbers, but, obviously incredible numbers, but the question is just how much of it is tainted. We don't know how long he's been using steroids. Does it go back to his early days in Seattle? Is it even high school? Was it later in his career? There's just so much unknown when it comes to these steroid users. So it's tough to give a legacy for what this guy has done in his career. But if we just go on Friday night, the crowd got to say their goodbyes. It was nice of Girardi to play him in at third base in that ninth inning, take him out to the standing ovation. And I thought really a well-done job by the Yankees, and a nice way for him to go out, no matter what you think of this guy.
Yeah, and then, he's been, for us growing up, we've seen his just about his entire career. He goes to right center field. He went into that gap a lot, with the RBI double, Gardner scoring from first. He's really just a pure hitter. Home runs, hitting for high averages, stealing bases. He really did it all in his prime. Was a good shortstop. Moved over to third base when he came to New York and made himself into an above-average defensive third baseman. So, like we said, it's been complicated, but they're ready to move on. And I think A-Rod, he's done. Look at the numbers, look at how much money he's made. I think he's set and he's ready to move on and become that guy in their front office to mentor the young players that are coming up, because they have a lot of middle infield prospects coming up. Not only that, but he's made mistakes, and he's admitted those mistakes now. But he can teach these kids a lot, what to do, what not to do. And just, he's been around the game for 22 plus years at the major league level since he's 18 years old. So he's got a lot to offer, and I think he's realized what he's done wrong over the years, and I think he's ready to enter his next chapter in his career, as a coach, a mentor, and teach these young kids the right way to play the game.
Yeah, and it's an interesting point, because I think since he's come back from that suspension where he missed all of the 2014 season, came back last year, was very productive in the middle of the lineup, hit over 30 home runs. But more than the numbers, beyond that, his reputation, I think, has been looked at a lot better lately, because he's carried himself better. He hasn't really been that much of a distraction with the Yankees, last week notwithstanding, but that's not really the fault of his own. But, just the personality, I think, and how he handles himself, and, as you say, mentoring the younger players, which is a very good role for him, stepping into the advisory position with the Yankees starting next year. But I think that's a big thing to bring up, because a lot of this guy's career, you think of him as kind of a jerk most of his career, the way he carries himself. But the last 2 years, I think he's won a lot of his once haters back into thinking he's somewhat respectable as a person. I think that says a lot about him.
Well, the Yankee fans, they admire him. I mean, they gave him a nice ovation Friday night, and most other fans are gonna, he got booed in Boston. He's gonna get booed most any other place he goes. But the Yankee fans, when he was going through that suspension, they wanted no part of him anymore. But now, like you said, last year he came back, he produced, he said all the right things, and now we got those fans back and to support him. And now what I want to know, Brian, and you're not going to know the answer to this, and neither am I, neither is anybody, but do you think he's actually played his last game?
Yeah, that was exactly something that was just going through my head. I was hoping we were going to bring that up because it's such an interesting question. I mean, if he does go to another organization, the one that comes to mind, being that he's from Miami, is the Marlins. Now, I don't know what they think of bringing him in. I heard they have had some level of internal discussions as to whether they bring him in. If I had to say right now, though, I don't think they're going to. I think he probably has played his last game, and I saw Ken Rosenthal wrote a piece like he doesn't want to tell A-Rod to stop playing, but because of what Friday night brought, it was such a good way for him to go out. It almost kind of defeats the purpose if he now goes and plays for another team. So if I had to say right now, and you can never rule anything out, and certainly with A-Rod, you just never know, but I think he should be done.
Yeah, I mean, nobody really knows the answer to that, but we'll see what happens there. I agree, though. I think Friday night was, other than the rain part, during the introduction, but you can't control that. It was a good night for him. His family, his mother was there, his daughters were there, and Mariano Rivera was there, Reggie Jackson. It was nice, and a nice way for him to go out. And hard to top that. So, does he want 700 home runs? He's 4 away. That's probably going to be in the back of his mind, but I agree with you. I think we don't know, but I think that would make sense for that to be it. So we'll see what happens there. Now, as far as the Yankees themselves go, Brian, we touched upon this a little bit earlier. Aaron Judge and Tyler Roston, 2 rookies making their Major League debut, make Major League history, going back-to-back in their first at-bats, back-to-back home runs. Now, Aaron Judge, we've heard about this guy. We've talked about the trade deadline. Again, we'll get into that, but the Yankees made some moves. They traded Andrew Miller, they traded Chapman, they traded Beltran, and they got back a lot of nice young players, arguably the top farm system in baseball right now. And we see Gary Sanchez up now, and now we see Judge, and Austin's really not one of their top guys, but that shows you how much depth they have in their system now to have these guys start to come in and start to give fans a glimpse of what the future holds.
Yeah, and they're starting to play really good baseball now. They're going for a sweep this weekend in the series against the Rays. They just taken 2 out of 3 from the Red Sox. And, we talked about them being sellers, but even with them making those moves and improving the farm system so drastically, I never really felt like they weakened their big league team all that much. Yes, they said goodbye to their late inning relievers, and we know how good Andrew Miller and Aroldis Chapman are, and we've seen what they can do in their new teams. But on the whole, even with Beltran, who had driven in so many runs and was such a factor in their lineup, and the 2 guys in the bullpen, the team the face didn't really change that much. They still kind of are what they are, and they still feel like they can compete even having been sellers. And right now you look up at it, they're 4 games over 500, and they're right now in the mix of an American League wildcard spot. Now, most people probably would say they're not going to make the playoffs, and they don't have to this year. As we said, they're building for the future, but they're starting to play their best baseball of the season right now, and they're in the mix.
Yeah, they are in the mix, and then, like you said, the guys they traded away are Aroldis Chapman and Carlos Beltran. Beltran's a 40-year-old DH who's a free agent at the end of the season, and Chapman's a closer who you pretty much gave nothing really to get, except Eric Jagello, who's a nice third base prospect, but he goes to the Cubs. You bring back Gleyber Torres, you bring back Billy McKinney, you trade Beltran, you bring back Dylan Tate and 2 others who, these are 2 guys who are free agents at the end of the season. Beltran's a 40-year-old DH, and if you really want Chapman back, there's no reason why they can't sign him as a free agent. And Andrew Miller, how great he's been, his contract is great, but if you can go get a Clint Frazier and the Justice Sheffield among 2 other nice looking relief pitching prospects. They really didn't, like you said, they didn't really trade away the core of this team. They traded away a DH who, albeit has been productive, is 40 years old, and two guys who throw one inning, and they still have Dellin Betances.
And their bullpen's still been good.
Right, and they go get Tyler Clippard.
Yep,
which
and Adam Warren back from the Cubs has been very good since acquiring him too.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's an interesting team, like you said. I don't think they're making the playoffs this year, but like you said, they don't have to. They're 3.5 out of second wild card spot there. 7-3 in the last 10 games. They've won their last 4, and it's amazing. But you look at the what they did. They didn't trade, the big, position players. They traded 2 relievers, and like I said, the DH, who they weren't, going to be on the team next year anyway, except Miller. But you can live with, because you have, the bullpen, like you said, has been excellent, and you still have Betances pitching in the 9th inning. So they made those moves, and really a lot of people in the industry applauded them for what they did. And they're looking toward the future. They have a lot of players who are going to be up and coming the next couple of years. And we're going to talk about what the Mets have done here as well, Brian, because they do go out and they get Jay Bruce. And like I said, not on the show here, but Jay Bruce would be such a typical Mets move, and it's not his fault what they've been struggling of late. But look at the Yankees and you look at the Mets. The Yankees were deadline sellers. They're 16-56. They're 3.5 games out of a wild card spot. And the Mets are now back to 500 after the win yesterday in extra innings, 58-58. They're 2.5 games out of a wild card spot, but it wouldn't surprise me if the Yankees end the season with a better record.
Yeah, it's certainly a possibility. The Mets have been very disappointing the last couple weeks. This was supposed to be the stretch of the year where they could, start to make a move. Everyone said, okay, they got this homestand against the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Padres, 6 games. Well, what happens? The Diamondbacks come into Citi Field and sweep the Mets. And then the Padres win Friday night, courtesy of Ryan Schimpf and his 2 home runs, including a grand slam. And then yesterday, Jacob deGrom goes out and gives 7 stellar innings, as he seems to every time out. The guy's just been outstanding this year. Terrific. And Addison Reed gives you a 1-2-3 8th inning. Mets have the lead with the closer on the mound, Familia, down to their final out. And Will Myers ties the game with the home run. You're thinking, oh no, in the words of Adam Rubin. But luckily, 2 innings later, the Mets win it on Wilmer Flores' fielder's choice. He hits a ball through the infield. Walker comes in to score, and the Mets finally get a win. But, it's just been tough sledding right now. They're a 500 team. The lineup is what it is right now. It's so beat up. They don't have Cespedes. Conforto wasn't producing at all. He's back in the minor leagues. Reyes returned yesterday to give them some kind of a jolt, but right now it's Neil Walker who's been on a tear the last couple weeks, and everyone else is struggling.
Yeah, well, it's like you said, Adam Rubin, the oh no, that's a textbook moment right there. But like you said, deGrom once again, pitching his heart out for this team, and a no decision. Familia, that was his first home run. He's giving up all year, I believe, to Will Myers there on the 2-out, 2-strike fastball to left center. The Mets did come away with the win, but again, it's just, Terry Collins went on that rant, I guess you can call it, a couple games ago.
That was much needed.
Yeah, well, it was, but you just look at this team, and me, and I just don't think it's the right mix of players. We talked about it last time. This is Sandy Alderson's philosophy: power, home runs, power pitching. He doesn't care about defense, and it's showing. Because if these guys not hitting the ball out of the park, I know I sound like a broken record, but they can't score runs. They can't manufacture runs. And this is not Jay Bruce's fault by any means, but he's come in and what's he hitting, like 2-something? He's got a couple home runs, good number of strikeouts. He's not going to win your Gold Glove out there in right field. You don't need him to, but now you have Diaz and Granderson splitting center field, and Conforto was up. Now he's down again. There's no reason why he should have been brought back up. Ty Kelly's out there. It's just really, it's the same old Mets. I hate to bring it up again and again, year after year, other than last year, but it's just the Mets. It's the same old Mets. The pitching hasn't been as good as it was last year, but deGrom and Syndergaard are holding down the fort. We know Harvey's out. We know Wheeler's going to see Dr. James Andrews. He may be done for the year again. But it's just, I feel bad for this team. I want to see them do well, but pitching, you don't need power offense. You need guys who can get on base, steal bases, manufacture runs, and prevent runs with good defense, and they don't have any speed or athleticism really on this ball club and haven't for quite some time.
Yeah, well, today's going to be a big game. They need to find a way to take this series from the lowly Padres. They have Mets on the mound in front of what's going to be a long road trip to Arizona, San Francisco, and St. Louis. The Mets have to find a way, to play better baseball. It's been flat out ugly to watch, as we've documented. So, that's pretty much the story right now.
It's amazing that they're just watching this team. It's amazing that they're in this thing, really. I mean, especially of late.
Well, you look at the other teams, the Marlins and Cardinals haven't been able to distinguish themselves in this wild card picture. The Pirates, haven't gotten going. So if one of those teams were having kind of their typical year, especially the Cardinals, the Mets might not be in a position. We know they're not in a position to challenge for the division. The Nationals had that locked up, but the Marlins have sputtered lately, as have the Cardinals. Pirates are just kind of hanging around 500, so it's allowed the Mets, who are a 500 team, to stay in the mix, and they can make the playoffs. It's not like this is a lost season. If they play better baseball, they're going to be in the mix. We'll see what happens, right. But it's certainly been frustrating.
And like you said, they're a 500 team, and generally in the middle of August, that's not going to get you in the mix. But the Cardinals are the Dodgers are 4.5 up on them, but you got Miami's a half game out in Pittsburgh, a game and a half. That's all that's in front of them right now in this wild card race. And like you said, they haven't separated themselves. So the Mets, as frustrating as it's been to watch recently, all it's going to take is, we saw it last year. I know Cespedes is out right now, but if this pitching can hold down the fort and this offense gets going, we know earlier this season they were hot. All it takes is one hot stretch, and the Mets are a very streaky team. If they go on one of those streaks, it could be enough to get them into the wild card race here. So let's go back to the trade deadline. And last time we did this, we did make some bold predictions. My bold predictions were Chris Sale gets traded and Wade Davis gets traded. Well, Wade Davis lands on a disabled list before the trade deadline, and there goes any chance of that happening. So the Royals make no moves at the deadline. White Sox, I still think Sale gets traded after the season, probably, but Brian's bold prediction, and we're going to talk about this, he said Yasiel Puig gets moved. He doesn't get moved, but it gets sent down to AAA, and it's just been what a whirlwind of a season for this guy, because they go out, they bring in Rich Hill and Josh Reddick from Oakland, so now they have Reddick playing right field, and Puig, he didn't show up or something like that, for a time there. Then we found out he was told not to come because he was going to get traded or get sent down, and we find out he gets sent down, and talk about a fall from grace for this guy.
Well, I'd say this, for the sake of the Dodgers and Puig both, it's best to move this guy. It's just not working out, and when he's in the right situation with the right manager and the right team and a clubhouse that can keep him under wraps, this guy has the talent to be one of the best players in baseball. We've already seen it in flashes with the Dodgers in past years, but he's just been hampered so much with whatever has befallen him. Now, we're not in the clubhouse, so we don't know exactly what's going on behind the scenes, but obviously there's a lot of issues here, because a guy with this talent should just not be rotting in AAA like he is right now, and I think he's hitting the ball really well since his demotion, but I just think for both sides, they got to move on from this guy and send him to a team, that can get him under control and get him to being a bona fide star player, because he has that kind of ability, and I want to see him do well.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of talks too about him. He's going to clear waivers. At this rate, in AAA now, and there are a lot of talks about maybe a move happening in August or at some point here and coming up. A lot of teams out there will probably like to bring in a guy like that ability wise, but also watching MLB Network a couple weeks ago, I remember listening to Dan O'Dowd talk about how people make adjustments, but he doesn't think this guy has any clue how to play the game of baseball. And you can talk about his talent. The talent is there, but if you don't know what you're doing out there, it's not going to matter. And this may be a case too, or he didn't spend a lot of time in the minor leagues. He kind of came right up to the majors, produced, and now expectations are so much higher. but he kind of needs to take the step back, like you said. It may be in the best interest. It definitely is for the Dodgers, but for Puig as well, to go back down, spend some time in AAA, and really just learn the fundamentals of the game, because he accelerates, everything. He thinks his raw talent and ability, which is excellent, but it's not going to get you to his, reach his ceiling. He needs to be smart out there, and at times he just plays the game recklessly. So, like you said, I think it's in the best. And the Dodgers are taking off right now, 65-51, without Clayton Kershaw as well.
That's the amazing thing.
Which I did not expect.
Well, since this guy has gone down, Kershaw, of course, we're talking about, they played their best baseball, and I almost look at it with them this year as that was like a wake-up call, because early on in the season, they were only winning pretty much when Kershaw was pitching. They were well under 500 any games he didn't pitch. Since he's gone down, their pitching has improved, their lineup has gotten a lot better, and, I mean, they're right now 4 games up on the second wild card with a very good chance to make the playoffs. They're right in the mix for the NL West, as a matter of fact, even with the Giants sputtering since the All-Star break. So I think they got a big wake-up call saying, we got to get our act together. This guy cannot be our whole team, and I think really woke them up when they lost Kershaw, because they've done a great job.
Yeah, they're only a game out behind San Francisco in the West, and I did say Clayton Kershaw was the NL MVP because of what you said, because they only win when this guy pitches. But now he goes down, and like you said, they're winning games. Nothing, they don't need him. I mean, they need him, but definitely helps. But they've been playing well without him. So usually I don't like to have pitchers in the MVP conversation. But when you have a guy like Kershaw and he's winning most of their games, and when he's not pitching, they're not winning, which was the case earlier this season without a doubt. That's why I had him in that mix. But now, he goes down, and guys are stepping up, and it takes a team, and they're getting it done now. So definitely something that I didn't expect, to be honest with you, but they're getting it done. So credit to them. And the Giants. I talked about this a couple weeks ago too. Giants Orioles is my World Series preview. That series is going on out west right now in San Francisco. So the Giants are right now, they're in the mix. Baltimore's in the mix, but I think it'll be an interesting series. It's fun to watch right now. Everyone's going to go with the Cubs, the Rangers, the Indians, all these teams that everyone wants to see win. But me, I always have to go off the path a little bit and pick something different. So Giants Orioles, we'll see where that goes. So let's talk about what did happen at the trade deadline. Like we said, a couple of guys get moved. We talked about Jay Bruce goes to the Mets. They give up Delson Herrera and Maxwell Tell. We can live with that. Nimmo, we heard, maybe going there. That didn't happen. What I want to say, though, with the Mets is if they're going to make a move, and Tom Verducci said this on the set of MLB Network during the trade deadline, is if they're going to make a trade, I'd rather get Lucroy than Jay Bruce. I think that's a bigger fit. He goes to Texas. First we thought he goes to Cleveland. He nixed that trade before it happens, and then he goes to Texas, where he's just been fantastic for them.
Well, anyone who acquired Jonathan Lucroy was going to be happy they made the trade, because, in a league where there's so many few good offensive catchers, this is a guy who hits 300. There's so few of those guys. He hits for power. He's hit home runs since the trade to Texas, and just enhanced a lineup that was so deep already. I mean, that Ranger team, to me, top to bottom, the bullpen and especially their lineup is just terrific. I think they're going to be so tough in October. But, I didn't hear Tom Verducci say that, but it's a good point that Lucroy would have been a better fit. Mets have had issues behind the plate. D'Arnaud hasn't been healthy much. Now he is, but, it's just been a struggle producing. And he certainly would look good right now, not only in the lineup, but playing the position behind the plate. So I certainly would have been fine if the Mets went out and got Lucroy, but right now it's the Rangers' gain, and they're certainly happy they made that trade. They also got Jeremy Jeffress, a late-inning, hard-throwing reliever, too. So they, to me, were one of the big winners at the deadline.
Yeah, like you said, Jeffress as well. They go get Beltran as well from the Yankees and give up Dylan Tate there. Lewis Brinton and Luis Ortiz, and a player to be named later goes back to Milwaukee. And these are two pretty big, chips that being talked about, and they were able to get both in Lucroy and Jeffress there. Will Smith, another former Brewers reliever, they made a lot of moves. Smith goes to the San Francisco Giants. They get back Phil Bickford, their top pitching prospect. The Cubs, they go out and get Joe Smith, a nice reliever for the late innings from the Angels. Another interesting trade, Brian, was we talked about San Francisco. They have Bumgarner and Cueto at the top of that rotation. The rest of it, kind of up and down with Samardzija and Matt Cain and Jake Peavy, those kind of guys. They make an interesting move. We talked about the Rays pitching. We did touch upon this on our last show. Chris Archer, he didn't go anywhere, but they moved Matt Moore, and he goes to San Francisco. An interesting trade because the Rays get back prospects Lucius Fox, but they also bring back Matt Duffy, who I was surprised that the Giants moved in that package.
Yeah, I was actually surprised to find out that the Giants parted with him because he was such a big part of what they did last year. This year kind of got up to a slow start, then was on the DL, but now he's back. The Rays have him playing at shortstop, but that's a nice little player for the Rays to get back, a guy they can move around. Those are the kind of guys they like, versatile, can play him all over the place, and can produce. And so I thought the Rays made out well to get Duffy from the Giants for Matt Moore in addition to the prospects they got.
Matt Duffy's a guy who fits because the Giants and the Rays are very similar teams where they move guys around, like you said. They rely on pitching, good athleticism, good defense. So it was interesting to see them match up on this trade here. We know Tampa is looking, toward the future here. 17 games out, 46 and 69 in the AL East. San Francisco, like we said, they have that one-game lead up on the Dodgers in the NL West. And they're looking towards October once again in the even season. So, a couple teams that are really starting to pull away here. Let's look here. We have Toronto. They're a half game up on Baltimore, 2 games up on Boston, and 5.5 games on the Yankees. In the Central, we have Cleveland, 5 games up on Detroit. In the West, the Texas Rangers, like we talked about with Lucroy and Jeffress as well, and Beltran. They're up 6.5 games on the Mariners, not the Astros. The Mariners have jumped Houston here, and they're now in second place. And this is a team for the past couple of years that people have been looking at and saying, okay, they're going to make this jump. They won 87 games 2 years ago, missed the wild card by 1 game to Oakland. But right now, a lot of people like Houston, but Seattle's jumped them here lately.
Well, they have as good of a middle of the order in their lineup as anyone in baseball. When you talk about pitchers having to go against Cano and Nelson Cruz and Kyle Seager as a 3-4-5, that's a lot of power and a lot of run production that the Mariners have. They've hit a ton of home runs this year. There's some questions in that rotation. Felix is back now, but probably not at 100%. Taijuan Walker's now in AAA. But Iwakuma's throwing the ball really well, and they got this flamethrower in the back end of the bullpen named Edwin Diaz, who is kind of setting the world on fire. Not many people may know what he's doing, but Cishek struggled. He was yanked from the closer role, and Diaz has stepped in and done a great job. They're an interesting little team out there in the AL West.
Yeah, generally with the Mariners, they have the pitching, but they don't have the offense like it's been the past few years. But this year, that middle of the order is really getting it going there. Felix, he's coming back from the injury. Walker's been up and down. James Paxton, again, Iwakuma, they bring him back, and he pitched well. So they're 2 out of a wild card spot. They're 8-2 in their last 10. So they're a team to watch out there in the West. Don't sleep on Seattle, and Houston's there as well, 7.5 out. But they're both looking to a wild card spot at best at this rate. And in the National League, Washington's 8.5 up on Miami, 10.5 up on the Mets. In the Central, the Cardinals are 13 behind the Cubs, and the Cubs are 14.5 up on the Pirates. I think who's winning that division. They just lost their first game in the 12 games. They were 11-0, and then they lost yesterday to St. Louis. San Francisco, like we talked about, 1 game up on the Dodgers. We look at 3 teams here. The Cubs with the 13-game lead, the Nationals with 8.5 game lead, and the Rangers with the 6.5 game lead. I think it's safe to say these divisions are just about set in stone here.
Yeah, I'd agree. And, let's go to the NL Central for a moment, because right around the time of the All-Star break, the Cubs suddenly were showing some warts. Their pitching wasn't doing real well. Arrieta went through a tough stretch, as did Lester, as did Lackey, and they started to give up some ground after, having a double-digit lead. It was down to about 7 or 8 games as the Cardinals and Pirates started to make a move. Well, now the Cubs here, since the All-Star break, they put the foot back on the gas. Arrieta's rolling, Lester's rolling. Kyle Hendricks might be the most underrated pitcher in baseball. The guy's been unbelievable this year. Had 12 strikeouts yesterday. And they, to me, are the most complete team. The one area they needed to address was the bullpen. Now they have just so many options in that bullpen. Chapman at the back end. They did lose Stroh, but we mentioned bringing in Joe Smith and Mike Montgomery. the team is loaded. I mean, I think they have to be the odds-on favorite to win the whole thing this year.
Yeah, well, I think I would agree with that. But, baseball, I mean, other than I think the Royals were the best team last year, but it's rare when you see the best team actually win the World Series. So they're a lock for October. We'll see how it goes there. The Indians here, let's talk about them because they do go get Andrew Miller. They don't get Lucroy, but Francisco Mejia, their catching prospect in the minor leagues. Last night he has a 49-game hitting streak that we thought was snapped. It's the longest in professional baseball in a long time. But he had an error, a double. It was changed to a double. The official score changed it late last night. So 50-game hitting streak now. This was the guy, the main primary guy who was going to go to Milwaukee in the Jonathan Lucroy trade. And I know prospects don't always pan out, but I'm saying it, blessing in disguise that trade's not going down because this guy is going to be their catcher for a long time. And I think he's the best catching prospect in baseball. I don't think it's even close. Miller, they go get him. They're catching. It's not Lucroy, but I think it's going to be enough to hold up the fort. Their pitching, been good all year. 5 games, Detroit's kind of, floating around here in the mix here, but 2 teams, I think Cleveland's going to come out on top here.
Yeah, I would have to agree. They've just been so impressive. Just the whole makeup of the team, they've got a good vibe around. That's one thing that I like watching them. And, I've talked about how it's a good mix between veterans and young players and led by this great rotation. Now they go out and get Andrew Miller, who doesn't necessarily have to be the closer. They can move him all around, use him in the 6th inning, the 7th. Terry Francona has a lot of options. He can go with him because he can give you multiple innings. It's just such a good weapon to have, especially in the postseason. And, they have just rolled over the Angels this weekend. Back-to-back games with over 10-run wins. They win yesterday 5-1. They've basically been the only team on the field this weekend against the Angels. They've been impressive, no question.
A lot of people last year thought this was going to be a team that's going to make some noise. Didn't happen last year, but this year, they've basically they've been steady all year. And
how about Jose Ramirez?
Yeah, really,
He's had such a good year for them.
Everyone talks about Lindor and Kipnis, and this guy here is playing third base and
hitting over 300.
Yeah, not really one of those top heralded guys in the farm system, but he's come up. He's had a very nice year for them. So it's just these guys who you just keep churning them out.
And Napoli's made such a big impact.
Yeah, again, another guy who no one talks about, no one was looking at really during the off season, and he just comes in and hits bombs like he does, and it's all clicking in Cleveland right now. Before we wrap up, this is something I want to talk about, and it's nuts, it's crazy, but it's also baseball, so bear with me for a minute, Brian. You know where I'm going with this, so let's just get into it. So the Royals this year are 56-60. Last year they didn't lose their 60th game until mid-September. So this year it's not happening, but it's a long season, and things just happen. Last weekend, a praying mantis lands on the hat of Billy Burns, and at that point on, they went 5-1. So now they're 5-2 because they lost last night to Minnesota. But the praying mantis comes, and the players just fall in love with this thing, this bug. Why? Don't ask me. I have no idea. But it's just the Royals, I guess. But they finish up the series with the Blue Jays. They lose Friday night. The praying mantis comes Saturday. They win Saturday. They win Sunday. They lose to the White Sox on Tuesday after an off day on Monday. Todd Frazier with the 3-run home run and extra innings there. But they win Wednesday. They win Thursday. And all of a sudden this praying mantis is this big thing because they've won four out of 5 games. So now they go to Minnesota on a road trip and they bring the praying mantis with them on the plane. And it's just insane. It's just nuts. Because like I said, only the Royals do something like this. They win Friday. And after the game, they find out that the praying mantis is gone. And the Royals, if you go on Royals Twitter, type in Rally Mantis, and it just blows up because, baseball players are superstitious. And then the mantis is now gone, and the Royals lose Saturday, so, the season's over because the praying mantis is gone. But, it's just insane. And it's just so funny to watch from afar what these guys do in the clubhouse and seeing on social media what Rustin Dunn and Jeffrey Flanagan are reporting out there. And then Danny Duffy makes a tribute video that Dylan G tweeted out, gets like 3,000 retweets. So rest in peace to the Rally Mantis, and the Royal season is now officially over. So I know Brian doesn't have a whole lot to say to that, but I mean, it's been a tough year for the Royals this year. And then you have something little thing come up, you win a few games, and now boom, like that. It's this big
that's
thing.
the kind of things that the Royals attach themselves to. They're just kind of one of those teams. You can tell they have fun with those kind of things. So certainly, if I were to say one team that it would happen to something like that, you'd probably guess the Royals.
There's no doubt about it. So long year, you're going through a rough stretch. Something like this happens, sparks the team for a bit, and well, it can't last forever. So that's that. Rest in peace, Riley Mathis. Let's get to the games yesterday.
All right, so here's the scores from Saturday. The Mets, we talked about it, the walk-off win over the Padres 3-2 after they squandered the lead in the ninth. Myers tied the game, but Flores delivered the walk-off fielder's choice, so the Mets finally get a win to snap their long losing streak. They'll go for the series win today. The Yankees beat the Rays 8-4, and of course the highlights there are the back-to-back home runs by Tyler Austin, Aaron Judge, who became the first teammates to homer in the first teammates to hit their first major league home run in the same game, let alone do it in back-to-back at-bats. So that was something to see at Yankee Stadium as the Yankees hit 5 total home runs. Tanaka got the win, 8-4 the final. Blue Jays over the Astros 4-2. Donaldson and Russell Martin with home runs for Toronto. Aaron Sanchez picked up his 12th win. Cubs had their 11-game winning streak come to a stop, 8-4 loss to the Cardinals. Grand slam for Randall Grichuk in the 8th inning was the difference for St. Louis. Dodgers pounded out 8 runs on 17 hits. They beat the Pirates 8-4. Home run for Jock Peterson. Nationals over the Braves 7-6. Trey Turner a big day. Daniel Murphy had a home run, 4 RBIs. Reynaldo Lopez picked up his first major league win. Phillies knocked off the Rockies 6-3. Maikel Franco a 3-run homer. Jared Eichhoff got the win. Red Sox beat the Arizona Diamondbacks 6-3 yesterday. White Sox over the Marlins 8-7. Reds beat the Brewers 11-5 in a match of two teams rebuilding. Royals fell in Minnesota 5-3. Few home runs hit by Minnesota, including Brian Dozier, who's been red hot for them. Indians beat the Angels 5-1 behind Steve Clevenger. Tigers blanked the Rangers 2-0 behind 7 scoreless from Matt Boyd. And Detroit got 14 hits off Cole Hamels, only 2 runs, but enough to beat him. Giants knocked off the Orioles in San Francisco 6-2, 7 scoreless for Bumgarner, 4 RBIs for Denard Span, and out west the Mariners beat the A's 4-3. So now we'll go to today's games. Mets try for the series win with Matz on the mound, Clayton Richard the opposition left-hander for San Diego. Yankees trying for a sweep. They're at home against the Rays, Jake Odorizzi against Luis Severino. The Astros and the Blue Jays battling it out in Toronto. Mike Fiers against Marcus Stroman. The White Sox are going for a sweep in Miami. They have Chris Sale on the mound against Tom Kohler. Diamondbacks have Greinke, and the Red Sox have Rick Porcello, a 15-game winner for Boston this year. They're at Fenway Park. Braves and the Nationals, and that's Tyrell Jenkins against Tanner Roark. Rockies and the Phillies from Citizens Bank Park. Tyler Chatwood opposes left-hander Adam Morgan. The Angels are in Cleveland. It's Jared Weaver against Trevor Bauer. The Angels will try to salvage one in that 4-game series. Cody Reed still looking for his first major league win. He gets the ball for Cincinnati against Willie Peralta in Miller Park. Royals and the Twins, a rubber game. Edinson Volquez against Hector Santiago, recently acquired from the Angels. Michael Fulmer's been outstanding for the Tigers. He gets the ball against Texas's A.J. Griffin. Wade Miley, another trade acquisition picked up by Baltimore. Johnny Cueto, the ball for the Giants, owes at the Giants. Mariners and the A's, it's Wade LeBlanc against Zach Neal. Chad Kuhl for the Pirates. Brett Anderson makes his season debut for the Dodgers. He had been out all season recovering from an injury. And Sunday Night Baseball, great matchup. Cardinals and the Cubs, their rivalry, and it's Mike Leake against John Lackey.
And for your Monday, we have the Red Sox taking on the Indians in the makeup of a rainout from April 7th. Josh Tomlin gets the ball for Cleveland against to be determined for Boston. More to be determined fun as the Yankees don't know who they're pitching yet tomorrow against the Blue Jays. In the Bronx, Art Dickey gets the ball for Toronto. 7:10 Royals and the Tigers in Detroit. Ian Kennedy against Daniel Norris. The Marlins and the Reds duke it out in Cincinnati. David Phelps against Brandon Finnegan. Padres take on the Rays in Tampa Bay. Luis Perdomo against Drew Smyly in that one. A's and the Rangers in Texas, Ross Detweiler against Martin Perez. The Nationals will travel out to Colorado to take on the Rockies, to be determined, against Jorge De La Rosa. Bartolo Colon gets the ball for the Mets as they go out west to take on the Diamondbacks against Robbie Ray. Felix Hernandez and to be determined have the ball in Anaheim as the Mariners take on the Angels, and the Pirates and the Giants out in San Francisco. Ryan Vogelsong and Matt Moore. So that'll do it for us today. Thank you everybody for listening, and we will see you next time.